The idea behind this video came from this book and how I started writing in it 8 months ago. But it wasn't exactly the most important thing going on in my life around that time. The first day I arrived in Poland, I grabbed my shoes and harness, and chalk and lotters and rope and quick draws and greedry and second pair of shoes and brush and tape and more quick draws and backpack, and headed out. Bought this notebook, and went to Zashuvek. Home to multiple crags, a spot for a post-crime dip, and a mysterious cave. But we'll get back to that later. While not known as a climbing destination, the Jura spans from Częstochowa down into Kraków. It's a great city to be a climber. It's a great city to be a sport climber. Something I'm not. So first I had to whip myself into shape and try learn the style. But as my fitness grew, the temperature dropped. All of a sudden, hands were numbing out mid-route. Must be time to boulder. I'm used to rain stopping play, but not snow or cold. Would it be a winter on resin? Or could I keep getting out on rock? What does a winter season look like in Poland? Time to research. Being relatively close and on a bus line, I started my season at an apt place for when it's beginning to get chilly. The first thing I climbed here was this. I did a couple boulders, but that first day I mainly wanted to check out some potential projects. If only I'd known that it was the driest I'd see the Crag for the next 3 months. Returning, the seepage had picked my project for me. Wiesz, so jest pięć. That first session, I did all the moves, except the trucks. And as the most consistently dry boulder, I ended up back here again and again, falling off this move again and again. I hadn't really tried the other lines on the same boulder. Then, one day, after meeting Adam, I decided I really should give them a go. I figured out the top of Spasapoa Blaya before giving it a go from the start. Ooh. Let's go for sure, right? Well, I'm easily distracted. And this sloper move Adam was trying looked right up my street. Some great moves linked together just as the sun set. Though not everyone was quite as appreciative. But you gotta give it to him. It's pretty funny. Back in Zimny Dół, I was the only person optimistic, or stupid, enough to head there in the snow. Ślązacy was my boulder of choice for squeezing all the blood out of my fingertips. Paid off, and was probably the best morning I spent out there. From hardly being able to pull off the ground, to slowly piecing together the moves, and then eventually sticking that hero final cut loose from the ground. It was lovely. And so, the obvious thing to do next was fall off and move a few more times. I never did do it, not even in isolation. It should stretch. But with all that snow, it was getting a bit too Zimny for Zimny. But do you remember that cave from earlier? I'd heard about how you could climb in it, but only in midwinter, the only time it was even close to dry. Close to dry, but still not dry. I'd heard between goes hold still needed to be towelled off. And skip in the gym for a damp cave. Crazy poles, I thought. So, who is this Twardowski? This guy. Legend has it, he sold his soul to the devil in exchange for magical powers, and this was his alchemy studio. But, as his climbers are well aware, this was never his studio. This was his homeboard. But for modern climbers, this is a playground. When it's minus 15, you can come in here and climb in a t-shirt. Nora's certainly a place for a crew. Come here alone with one pad. Feels a little bit lonely. But bring a few of you, get the light bouncing around, start pulling hard, and suddenly you can look past the dampness, see the cool movement and interesting shapes in the rock. Before we go any further, let me be clear, don't blowtorch rock. And lots of rock types shouldn't be climbed when wet either. Sandstone, gritstone. They're easily damaged. Also, please subscribe. Anyway, back to Nora. If Viesh So ESPN was the project that picked itself this winter, Fakir was the one I chose. But at first, Fakir seemed ambitious. Given the whooping I'd had at Zimny, I assumed the easier exit Pni I Gni would still be a serious project. I surprised myself by working out all the moves solidly on my first session, and then getting it done first red point of my second. All, but overall too quick, both the ascent and the process. That video was the obvious choice of something harder to try, but took quite a few goes and a few extra pads to commit to the wildly horizontal move that is the start of the standstart. One more session figuring out the awkward move to connect the two halves and dialing in beta. Then spending my Saturday in a cold and cave. It was time for red point goes. The following Thursday, having just about recovered from climbing through the bottom so many times, I was back with a strong crew from Corona and sat down for my first go. Two days after finishing Fakir, I was back here. But in contrast to the large crew, it was just one or two of us, little light, and a lack of project to motivate me. All of a sudden I was all too aware of Nora's Nora-ness. After 10 sessions, the site had gone. What's that? In contrast to a limestone cave, one day of sun allowed for my first taste of Polish sandstone. However, this little quarry wasn't the most inspiring, and awkward sit starts didn't help. But there was interesting moves, nice people, sunshine, and friction. Lacking a car, I ended up at Tarnawa and other trads because friends were heading there. Not that I minded. I was always psyched to check out a new trad. Maybe too psyched. I joined Mirek for a tour of his unfinished projects, and quickly they became unfinished projects for me too. A lot of good links made, but a lack of return visits or sends. But some days did provide a little more volume. Niegowonice was home to some sit Cs that required two 8th grade climbers to come up with wildly alternative beta, as well as some quality mid-sevens. These little things are pretty important for what I do. That doesn't mean I don't sometimes forget to charge them. And of course, the day I arrive at the Crag having done exactly that was probably my most successful of the winter. Luckily, David, before jumping into spot, did get a video of the biggest success of the day, Amores Peros dla Leche. The hardest boulder I've managed in a day, and a bit of a surprise at the end of a 5-hour session.
Come on.
But it wasn't the only boulder. Some quality techie low ball warm-ups and a flash of a cool steep one that David also got up for his first 7B. I was glad to finally make it to Borzęta, and in time for the sandstone slopers still to have some friction. Even the next day it was warm enough to get out on a rope, though the rain didn't exactly help. While realistically too warm to hold the sandstone slopers for Rick wires, I couldn't turn down the opportunity to go to a new, still secret, Crag. Me and Marcin got the tour from Łukasz and Kuba, who develops the place, trundling ungodly amounts of rock and putting in the work on boulders from font 5 to 7C, and it certainly paid off.
Something we can share, and it won't be too long. You know that time is gonna come, like the words to a song that's finally getting sung.
While this 7A went down quickly, the temperature wasn't exactly conducive to holding the slopers on the 7B extension. Never mind the hardest boulder there, a 7C that Łukasz wanted to get my thoughts on, but I couldn't even start. While I couldn't do much on the harder boulders there were still some quality lines. This had been the standout of the day. much like the rep, where a tucked-in t-shirt and a bit of hip action got me up it. The final bowl of the day was unlocked with a technical knee and a sock tied around my leg. Some excellent tactics, if you ask me. But the Crag isn't just sevens. There's easier climbs, and a project waiting for someone that likes finger locks and is more flexible than me. With that, the pad went down to the basement and the rope came back out of retirement. Time for me to start my never-ending project of attempting to become a sport climber.